live stream with StudioJake. Today we have a very special event going on. We have Rosemary Deware from the epic Red Alert Politics. She does all kinds of contributions for them and on subjects like foreign policy, but she does all kinds of things. And then we also have my all-star guest, Ezra Celeste, who is the purveyor of the Sleepy Rebel, and you might have seen her a couple of weeks ago when we did our SJW skit. Thank you, ladies, both for being here. Today we're going to talk about Spider-Man Homecoming, the latest in the Marvel movie franchise. So, right off the bat, before we get into it, I want to ask each of you, what were your expectations for this movie after seeing Captain America Civil War, which introduced Tom Holland as Spider-Man? Were you impressed with him in Civil War, or were you kind of like, wish someone more experienced was handling it, or did you like it? Rosemary, we'll start with you.
I wondered whether or not they were going to be doing any backstory, since you get introduced to Spider-Man right off the bat. You don't get to see an origin. And we've seen adaptations of the origin before. So seeing whether or not they would do any flashbacks, seeing if they were going to introduce other people from the past or not, were things I was maybe considering they would use, but as we can see, they chose not to. And I was kind of surprised how much they used Iron Man in this one. So, but yeah, definitely some surprises.
So what about you, Ezra? What kind of expectations did you have going in to see it?
I thought he was really, really good in Civil War. I mean, not anything, to write home about. And that's kind of what my overall thoughts were on the movie. I wasn't thoroughly impressed, but also I liked the fact that he was actually a teenage kid, was actually a young Spider-Man. He was believable a lot more than the past two have been. So I did have, I was positive going into the experience, I would say.
Well, that's good. For my part, I was super excited when I saw the Captain America Civil War trailer where it ended with him, because my favorite superhero will always be Batman. I've got his first issue right there on my wall, but Spider-Man is definitely my second favorite. All my below Batman, all my top 10 characters, with Wonder Woman at number 10, so in between 1 and 10 are all Marvel characters. So I was pretty excited. I have to admit, after hearing that Sony was going to be more involved than was initially thought, I was a little hesitant about it, because Sony was just making so many bad decisions about the franchise. So I was like, oh, how much power is Kevin Feige going to give them? But it ended up, I went in, I was telling Ezra before we started, I went in with middle expectations. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be terrible, but I wasn't expecting it to be, like The Dark Knight. So that's kind of where I stood. But first impressions, just overall, Rosemary, what did you think of the film? How, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being terrible, 5 being good, where would you land it?
I would probably put it at a solid 3. It's like there are some things that I'm trying to see what they're going to try and do next, and there's a lot of villains that people are really looking forward to seeing, and seeing how they're going to integrate those is going to kind of probably have me reevaluate the first one as they continue to adapt it. But yeah, probably definitely a 3.
All right, Ezra, how would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 5?
Same as Rosemary, I would go with a 3. I think it's it was kind of like another Avengers, and there wasn't a whole lot of Spider-Man, I would say. It was just like another Avengers / Iron Man movie. So I wasn't completely impressed with it, but I wasn't thoroughly disappointed like I was with Amazing Spider-Man. So solid 3.
I'm a little biased. So I'm going to give it a 4. I don't know why I keep holding this up. I think it's just because the only Spider-Man thing I have. But I'm going to give it a 4. My big complaint about it was the villain, the Vulture. It was kind of like he was just there as Spider-Man's foil. He wasn't very well developed, and Spider-Man films have kind of a high bar because of Spider-Man 2, because Doc Ock. In my personal opinion, Doc Ock was probably the best villain of all the Spider-Man, of the modern Spider-Man movies. He was just so well developed. He had such a great story and a great actor to back him up. And in the Vulture's case, or Adrian Toomes, he had a great actor like Michael Keaton, but they just didn't develop him enough. And so it felt like, even with the kind of the twist at the end. Oh, and anyone watching, there will be spoilers. So just so you know, there will be spoilers as we talk about this. But that was kind of my, that's kind of what brought it down for me. Iron Man being in it actually made me like the film more, because I like the franchise as a whole. And I have my co-writer at Conservative News. He totally disagrees with me. He's like, all the heroes should just be like these. They should stop treating it like it's a glorified TV show. And I'm like, sometimes I roll my eyes when I hear stuff like that, but I know it's a valid point. As far as Tom Holland's performance, Rosemary, what did you like and dislike about Tom Holland as Spider-Man?
Well, there's not a lot to dislike. I think he's actually a formidable young Spider boy, and I think that him being a 15-year-old and still, it's like, the whole point of this obviously is to continue to develop Spider-Man. It's like this is our first intro to him, really. We're really getting to see what it's like for him at home, really what it's like for him at school, and then you're seeing that dynamic between him and Tony Stark. So it's like, for what was there so far, I think he did a very good job. And again, it's like, it'll depend on what writers choose to do with him in the future with more stories. But for now, it's like, I'll give him a 5 out of 5 for so far.
All right, Ezra, what would you say?
I thought it was a very solid performance for the writing that was given to him. It matched him very well. He was he plays a teenager, and he looks and acts the part. It was very where Spider-Man has always been that, like, kind of the smart aleck type. He's always talking to his villains as he's fighting with them and stuff, and the writing matched, or his acting style matched the writing, I should say. The writing matched his acting style. It was perfect. Every line was delivered, and he matched that comic type of style, and the comical type of style, I mean. So I think he did really good, and it'll be good to see how he develops. So his performance, as it were, it was good.
Yeah,
I liked him as well. I thought that, especially being such a young, inexperienced actor, he's only had child roles, and even those are rare and far between. I think Looper, the YouTube channel Looper, recently did it was Screen Junkies. They did before they were famous MCU edition, and like, his first role is just a cameo in a movie about a tidal wave disaster. So I don't know if y'all have seen the first look for Avengers Infinity War, and for my viewers, if you haven't seen it, definitely search that on YouTube after this. Avengers Infinity War first look. Tom Holland mentions that one of the first see as a teenager was the first Avengers film. So it's really cool to see kind of a fan of the franchise step into it as well. And what's funny is, we're talking about Robert Downey Jr. being in it. Robert Downey Jr. was only supposed to have a cameo. He was only supposed to have a 2-minute cameo when they were writing it for Captain America Civil War, but he actually liked Tom Holland, that he went to the writer of Spider-Man Homecoming and said, give me a bigger role in this film. I want to be part of this. So I think that's kind of cool too. I guess Robert Downey Jr. has kind of taken over Jerry Seinfeld's role as the nice guy of Hollywood, especially since Jerry Seinfeld hasn't been in any films lately. But I think that that was kind of cool. And but this was kind of a controversial thing. It's not, if you're familiar with some of Spider-Man's alternate universes, like the Ultimate Comics, but having a younger Aunt May as opposed to kind of one that's, she's more old enough to be his mom as opposed to being old enough to be his grandmother. Any likes, dislikes about that, or just about Marissa Tomei's performance in general? Ezra, I'll start with you this time.
I think just being more familiar with the older Aunt May, I was a little disappointed. Marissa Tomei isn't that homely grandma, like you want to come home to and hug type of person. You know, she's very good looking, so it was very strange. But it, you know, her acting itself was awesome. She was great. It just, for me, I was nostalgic for, you know, the Aunt May from the first Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire days.
Who was that? Do either, I can't remember her name, but
it's Rosemary something. I can't remember her last name.
Yeah, I don't
it would be
remember
Rosemary, wouldn't it? Well, Rosemary. Yeah. Rosemary, what did you think about Mr. Tomei as Aunt May?
I mean, if I had to choose between Sally Field and Melissa Tomei, I would prefer Melissa Tomei, but again, it is slightly disappointing not to see someone classic to the comic book, someone who was more like the one from Tobey Maguire's series. But I think for what they're trying to go with, I think that again, it's like this being the intro, it'll depend on how it all kind of pans out, and even her reaction at the end when spoiler alert, she figures out that Peter Parker is the Amazing Spider-Man. So it's like, again, I think for what the story is written for right now, I think it's good. And even that dynamic between her and Tony Stark and trying to fill that mother-father role that Peter Parker doesn't have, I think it works. I think it definitely works for a 15-year-old type of Peter Parker.
What do you? This is something that I thought was interesting. Was they just completely threw out the origin? They gave it a one line in the film when he's talking to his friend Ned.
Yeah.
That was it. They just focused on giving us this big story. So, Ezra, what do you think about? Did you miss seeing the origin? Would you have liked to see it as an MCU in the MCU context, or are you just kind of like, oh, they've already done it twice, I get the idea?
Yeah, I was actually going to be really disappointed if they just redid the same movie again. So I'm glad that they didn't have that origin part of it. You know, we were already introduced to him in Civil War, so that's kind of just what they went with. That's where they started. He's already been Spider-Man, so we don't have to re-see the exact same thing that we've seen in the past two renditions of him. So I liked it.
Rosemary, do you agree, disagree?
I do agree, because like even with the two series before, it's like there's this conflict of whether or not it's a radioactive spider or whether or not it's hybrid, and I think just getting rid of that confusion is like we've seen it twice, and I think kind of just glossing over it, I think, is enough. And seeing someone shiver for 7 minutes overnight, I think everyone can kind of just miss. So yeah, I think it was not valuable enough to the story in order to add it. Although I know a lot of fans that I've spoken with were not happy with that. It's like especially a lot of the younger crew, like they didn't grow up with stuff from 2002, so they're like, oh, I wanted to see that so bad, it was the worst. For us that have grown up with it, we're just like, we're done, we're good.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's true, like, because Sam Raimi, I thought, did a good job interpreting Spider-Man's origins.
Yes.
And Mark Webb, while I did like the first Amazing Spider-Man, if you actually watch those movies side by side, especially the part after Peter gets his powers, they're almost identical movies. You know, I mean, for that time. So I actually agree with the two of you. I think, you know, maybe like when they do the opening credits for the Marvel movies, maybe they could have thrown in, you know, kind of like a flashback-esque picture collage thing like they do sometimes. I get, you know, that might have been appeasing, but One thing that I didn't like about that is they didn't mention Uncle Ben in this movie at all.
I know, yeah, that's the one thing missing.
That was one thing about the origin that I was missing. Not necessarily that he had to do with great power comes great responsibility, but not necessarily that they had to have that, but just that Uncle Ben wasn't, he was referred to a couple of times, or hinted at, I should say, but he was not specifically mentioned as the inspiration for Peter's origin. So, Rosemary, what did you think of that? About kind of that lack of that quirk, or are you just kind of like, I didn't even miss it?
I think that's possibly one of the rewrites that might have happened once Robert Downey Jr. said he wanted a bigger part in it. And like I said before, him filling in that father void that's going on there. And if you guys haven't read Jacob Airy's, let's see, his article on the Daily Wire about the movie, you guys need to go read it. But it's like you had called it like a coming of age story for Peter Parker, and I think on some level this also became a coming of age story for Tony Stark. The past two movies we see him reconciling all of his emotions with what happened with his mother and father, and now it's like, and in the movie, spoiler alert, he's like trying to correct Peter Parker and trying to discipline him properly. He's like, I'm getting to sound like my father. So it's like, so again, I think that's one of the reasons why they haven't gone into that yet, is because they wanted to give Tony Stark a big enough chunk role in order to kind of fill that psychological spot.
Ezra, what do you think?
I completely agree. I think that's the exact reason that they left out any inspiration he would have gotten from his Uncle Ben, is because Tony Stark is supposed to be that inspiration. So I think, whenever Tony Stark takes away the suit and tells him I don't remember the exact line, but he says something like, you can't be a hero. The suit doesn't make the hero or something. It's you have to be.
If you're nothing without the suit, you don't deserve to wear it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think that kind of takes over that whole, the line of, with great power comes great responsibility. That's something that now he has to think about and will always have with him. So.
And I do see that point. I think just for me being a fan of the comic books, I missed just some sort of reference. But it's now, hearing you two talk about it, I kind of see your point, because especially with the first two, or with Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, I should say, those two movies were combined were an origin story. Like at least with the Tobey Maguire trilogy, he kind of moved on from the first film and started, kind of getting a grasp for being a hero. And, by the third one, he was a little bit more of a veteran. Of course, we don't need to talk about the third one, but I guess I kind of see your point. Here's something interesting that Tom Holland said on Twitter. He put, I don't know if you remember the scene in Iron Man 2, which, I know not everyone's a fan of that film, but the part where the bad guy, Whiplash, he takes over the droids, and then there's a kid and a droid is standing over him, and he's wearing an Iron Man mask, and Iron Man swoops in to save him. Tom Holland confirmed that was Peter Parker.
I saw that actually, yeah.
I know, I thought that was kind of a weird twist of fortune there. So I was actually, when I had read that before and went and saw the movie, so I kept expecting like the scene, like maybe that would be the opening scene of the movie is Peter Parker, but then that didn't happen. So that's another reason I don't give it a perfect 5. But apparently Tom Holland is banned from reading the Avengers Infinity War script. He can only read it when he's on set, because he gave away too many spoilers about Homecoming during all these interviews.
That's what.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm going to move on to Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture. And one thing that I thought was cool was in his gang, they had both, because a lot of people argue, oh, I like the Ultimate Universe Spider-Man where so-and-so is this character. And what's funny is for the Shocker, they had the original mainstream Shocker and then the Ultimate Shocker. He was, for those of you who are not familiar with comic books and have seen the film, spoiler alert, the mainstream comic books Shocker gets vaporized by the Vulture in the film, and so the Ultimate version, he was part of the gang initially. He takes over, so I thought that was kind of funny, is how that's how they resolved it, is we're going to put both versions in the film. So, but anyway, back to what Michael Keaton. I just want to say that what my commentary about the Vulture does not take away from Michael Keaton's performance. I thought, you know, seeing him be Batman in Tim Burton's Batman adaptation, and then seeing him be Birdman, and then seeing him be the villain, the Vulture, I thought that felt like a natural evolution to his career. It was, and I thought that despite the fact that they didn't really develop him that well, I thought that he did a great job as that character, and I thought that the film did a good job of modernizing the Vulture. Rosemary, I'll start with you. What did you think about Michael Keaton as Adrian James?
I think he did a good job. And your observations, like, I don't know what it is with him and being winged. Apparently he has something for it. But I think his performance was good. Even that interaction that they have towards the end about the social stuff that he's having to deal with, and it to me, it just sounds like it's like you can almost put Ben Shapiro's head like right on Spider-Man's body, and then you've got Bernie Sanders right there. He's like, this is the way it is. We get scraps. And you have that wonderful morality talk that's happening. And but I think I do wish there was more development there. You do move fast through a 8-year period when it comes to his character, and even in the end, when he ends up meeting with another known name that eventually becomes another villain. There's a possibility of us seeing more of him. So it depends on what they choose to write next. So we'll see.
Yeah. Ezra, what do you think?
I enjoyed his performance. I don't think, like you and Rosemary said, he wasn't developed as much. I would say perhaps that has a lot to do with the fact that you have Rob Lowe. No. Who was Iron Man?
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I just blinked. I think Robert Downey Jr. is, you
just offended every Iron Man fan on YouTube.
I know. So sorry. Rob Lowe. What am I doing? Robert Downey Jr. Yeah, I think he is the, he's the big name on the film. And so I think he gets more on-air screen time and more of a development than anyone else, such as Michael Keaton would get. So I would say maybe that has something to do with it. But I did enjoy his story. I thought it was very believable and relatable to current events. So I liked it. I liked his performance.
Because someone was asking me, why are they doing so many origin stories? Why don't they just? And I really think that if they don't do origin stories and just go straight into the Avengers or Avengers Infinity War, then you have the central problem of you have to develop those characters in Infinity War. So and unless you're Peter Jackson in Lord of the Rings, only Gandalf and Frodo and Sam were developed in the first film. Really, if you look at the movie,
exactly.
Not even Aragorn was really developed until the Two Towers. So, and Infinity War, as we know, is just going to be a duology. It's not going to be a trilogy. So, I really think that they did that. All these origins. So, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. And although Captain America kind of got gypped out of his third standalone film, but I really feel that they did that. So when Infinity War comes, it's supposed to be the biggest Marvel movie ever. All these characters are ready to go. We're just like, okay, let's just do it. And again, if you watch the first look, you can tell this is going to be a big film. And I'm actually glad they have brothers directing it, because there's no way, unless you're Francis Ford Coppola, could you handle that kind of film. I guess Peter Jackson. I'll give Peter Jackson his due, but you have to be a really strong director, especially because we all know, they're also dealing with a lot of prima donnas in the actors. So I know it's 2-on-1 is probably better than just 1 against 5,000. So I really think too, as far as going back to the Vulture, the no-name character you mentioned, Rosemary, people may have noticed he had a scorpion tattoo.
Yeah.
So I think we're seeing Matt Gargan.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that Matt Gargan is going that instead of doing the Sinister Six in the Venom storyline that Sony is doing, Sony, you're making a mistake. That Gargan and Toombs are going to create the Sinister Six. So we'll just have to wait and see, because they have not. They said that they started writing Homecoming 2. Hopefully that's not its name, but we have no idea what's going to be involved in that film. But they've already introduced 3 of the Sinister Six. You had Shocker, Vulture, and Scorpion had a cameo. So they've all been part of the Sinister Six, or as I knew them as the Insidious Six, if you liked Fox Kids. They're yeah. Yeah, Sinister was too evil of a word for Fox Kids, so they called them the Insidious Six. So moving on to that, what would you like to see happen in a potential Spider-Man sequel? Rosemary, what would you like? When I mentioned throwing a villain you'd like to see, or just see the story evolve, what would you like to see in a potential sequel?
Well, it's like when you have Ned, who's almost become like, what's that other character's name? Genki Lee? Gang.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So
from the Ultimate Comics.
Yeah. So it's like if you have, and it's like, and he's the one, isn't he the one that discovers, what's it? Miles Morales?
Oh, Miles Morales. Yes, yes, that character, he's friends with him.
Yeah, so it's like if there's that type of crossover that's about to happen, I think that would be a really good dynamic story. So it's like that would, for me, that would be a really interesting thing to integrate, and I think it would make everyone, even in the unfortunate SJW universe, be satisfied. But I think that would be an interesting story to kind of develop and see what happens.
Ezra, what would you like to see in a sequel?
I am really looking forward to Scorpion being developed. I think that, and plus it's such an unknown actor that I think it would be good to see what he has to bring, as well as continuing Michael Keaton. I had also seen, it was somewhere on Twitter where someone was speculating that Ned, which is his friend, or his best friend in the film, he could, or either him or his father could possibly become Hobgoblin, which would be pretty awesome, because he could turn out to be Ned Leeds.
Right.
So I think that would be an awesome twist.
I'm going to give a little background just for any nerds out there. Ned Leeds in the comic books, he was brainwashed by a man named Roderick Kingsley. Roderick Kingsley was the original Hobgoblin, but he brainwashed Ned Leeds in the comic book. So I just want to give anyone who's not familiar with the characters, I want to give that backstory. There's also a little known character. He didn't last very long in the comic books, but he was a heroic Green Goblin. His name was, I can't remember, but he was the son of the character of Ben Urich from the Daredevil series. And so some people, his last name was Ulrich like his dad, but I can't remember his first name. But he accidentally stumbled on the Green Goblin costume, and he became a heroic Green Goblin for a while. No one liked that. No one.
No.
So it was right. It was during the time when Peter Parker had retired from being Spider-Man, and so Ben Reilly was Spider-Man at the time. So Ben Reilly was just kind of like, whatever, my spider sense isn't going off, so I'm good. because Ben Reilly didn't experience Harry as the Green Goblin, so he like Peter did. Long story short, a lot of people think maybe they're going to combine Ned with the younger Ulrich, and maybe have him become the Goblin, but maybe a heroic version that is going to introduce. I'm not sure how. I don't know if that's true. I think maybe they just like you were saying, Rosemary. They introduced the character from the Ultimate comic books, but gave him a more familiar name. Because Ned Leeds is a pretty familiar name to comic book readers. So I think he'll probably stick with the man in the chair idea. Now let's talk about what we don't want to see in the sequels. I personally, I don't want to see. How should I word this? I don't want to see the Osborns. The Osborns were overdone in the first two Spider-Man franchises. Maybe save it for the third movie. But I just think the Osborns, they just beat that dead horse until there's nothing but bones. So I'm ready for them to move on to other characters, like I said, maybe later on, but for now, let's just let what they have developed. Rosemary, what do you not want to see in
Homecoming 2? I do not want to see Carnage anywhere. Carnage needs to be its own separate spin-off. Carnage doesn't need to be anywhere near this. Nowhere. But
all right,
but
fair enough.
Spin it off.
All right, Ezra, what you don't want to see in the sequel?
I'm with you. I do not want to see Osborns. I do not want to see another Green Goblin. Please, no. And I do not want a repetition of Spider-Man 3. Please, never again.
Yeah, I talked to a friend of mine, and this actually agree with him. I was like, he's like, I don't want to see Sandman ever again. There's just no point.
Oh no.
Because there's no way. Well, you know why they picked Sandman for 3? It's because he was Tobey Maguire's favorite Spider-Man villain, and so that's why he was chosen. My understanding was originally they were going to enter. Yeah, I know he ruined it in more ways than one apparently, but originally they were going to introduce the Hobgoblin, and then the Hobgoblin was like going to be like Harry's uncle and manipulate Harry, and he was supposed to be the second villain. But they, I know this would have been way. Now, granted, this is just rumors that I've read on message boards, comic book fans, but the rumor is that Hobgoblin was supposed to manipulate Harry, and then but then when Toby was like, no, make it Sandman, he's my favorite bad guy, they went with that. So yeah, no more Sandman. We're good. Now so we already said Vulture, Shocker, Scorpion. I would also like to see, to complete the Sinister Six, I would like to see Mysterio, a cooler version of Electro. See, I know this is kind of an esoteric, as Michael Knowles always likes to say, villain, but I would like to see Boomerang. And I know he's not as popular, but I think he would just be a good throwaway villain that they could put in there. It's just kind of cool to say, oh, look, it's Boomerang. So I don't know if they will, though, because Suicide Squad introduced the Flash's version of Boomerang, so I don't know if they will. Rosemary, do you have a couple others you'd like to tack on to complete the Sinister Six?
Not that I'm... honestly, it's like, I can't think of anyone else right now. Can't.
All right, Ezra?
I can't either. I think you named the ones I really want to see, if they even want to tackle all of them. I'm a little concerned that, they'll take too much under their belt and then it becomes a terrible movie.
Right, yeah. If they did it like, I don't know if there's a great Michael Mann movie called Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino plays a cop, and Robert De Niro plays the head of a bank robbing gang. And they, if they did something, and so you get to know Val Kilmer plays one of them, Danny Trejo plays one of the gang members. The two of them played some of the gang members. And I think if they were able to do something like, obviously not as dark as a Michael Mann film, but if they were to pull like just those big roles, I think they could pull off a Sinister Six movie. I would like them to see them introduce. Oh, here's a fun fact. I didn't even realize this. I had someone pointed this out, but the character that Spider-Man webs to his trunk, who told him where to find the Vulture's men, that was the Prowler. I didn't know that until I watched a breakdown video, but that was the Prowler. So, and he's actually, the Prowler is a villain, but then he becomes a hero. So, you know, I would like to see them introduce more of Spider-Man's heroic sub-characters, you know, not in a cheesy way. I know they're going to give Black Cat and Silver Sable their own movie. Again, why, I don't know. Silver Sable's not even a Spider-Man character. I don't know how Sony got the rights to her. But anyway. All right, so final question. I want us each to think of 2 possible names for a Spider-Man Homecoming sequel other than Spider-Man Homecoming 2. I know there's been some jokes, and I know this is kind of folks, they didn't know I was going to do this. This is a total gotcha moment. I got Rosemary and Ezra on a gotcha moment here, but I do want to hear what they would like to be the sequel named. I'll go first, and right off the bat, I'm going to steal an easy one. I would like to maybe see it named The Spectacular Spider-Man, which is another one of Spider-Man's most famous titles outside of The Amazing Spider-Man. And then I would like to see it, if it is a Sinister Six sequel, Spider-Man Sinister Six. So Rosemary, I'll let you go first. If you were to title the sequel, what would you call it? Give me 2 ideas.
Oh goodness. Say So if they're going to develop, if they're going to develop the Sinister Six and they're wanting to develop Shocker more, it's oh god, that's so corny, but just Spider-Man Shocked, which sounds more like a Raid commercial than a sequel.
Maybe any worse than Attack of the Clones. All right, Ezra, I'll let you do your first one, and then we'll go back to Rosemary. So, Ezra, what's your first one?
You know what? I'm gonna stick with the corny high school and go Spider-Man Graduation.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Got that. All right, Rosemary, back to you. Number 2.
And maybe Spider-Man Evolution.
Oh, that's actually a really good idea. So, all right, Ezra, your final idea.
Oh man. Honestly, I don't know. The Fantastic Spider-Man.
Oh, and you had Web of Spider-Man, the Sensational Spider-Man, and she steals from the Fantastic Four. Oh, one of the worst superhero movies ever.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe this will make something out of the Fantastic.
Well, you know, what's interesting is Spider-Man actually joins the Fantastic Four for a little bit in a really rare storyline. The Fantastic Four actually changes its name to the Future Foundation, and they actually ask Spidey to join. And I don't know if, again, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the film, but remember in the scene where he's standing and the Avengers A is behind him all epically? That is from that issue where Spider-Man joins the Future Foundation. So a lot of people think maybe, and I think this is just wishful thinking, but a lot of people think maybe if the upcoming, again, Fantastic Four reboot fails, that 20th Century Fox may finally give Fantastic Four. You know, Fox can keep the X-Men. The X-Men universe is so big, they can develop a whole universe around it. But I think especially with Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr. retiring, Chris Evans retiring, Chris Hemsworth, and so forth, I think the Fantastic Four would be a good way to step up step up that franchise, bring Reed Richards back into the fold as the leader of the Marvel superheroes. So, all right, so everyone, thank you so much for watching. Rosemary, tell everyone where they can find you and give a Follow Friday shout out to someone.
All right, so you can find me on Red Alert Politics. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at RLYNND1. And shout out to, let's give it to Warrior Woman 91, Kelly Campanella. She is fantastic, and she has you can follow her on Twitter as well. And yeah, definitely keep your eye on her. She's awesome.
She is awesome. I've had her on StudioJake. And I've been on her show. She does amazing stuff. So Ezra, where can people find you and give a Follow Friday shout out to someone?
You can find me. I have a blog called thesleepyrebel.com or on Twitter at Ezra Celeste. And you can also follow, Jacob Airy, of course, if you're not following him. And one of my favorites, Amanda, I don't know how to say her last name, so follow her on Twitter as Amanda Presto. Yeah. So she's awesome, writer at the Daily Wire. So
yeah, she covers sometimes the stuff she digs up. I'm like, please tell me this is a parody, because if you read some of her articles on the Daily Wire, you lose all hope for humanity. I want to thank my special guests again for joining me for the special Spider-Man Homecoming panel. Rosemary Deware, thank you so much. Ezra Celeste, thank you both so much. I really appreciate you taking time out of your Friday evening. I know Fridays are always hard because you want to paint the town red. I'm going to paint the town nerd. So everyone, be sure to like and subscribe for more amazing content. You can follow me on Twitter at RealJacobAiry, and also pick up a copy of my novel Cacophony. You can get it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thank you so much.